조와 군제 장랑 지산바 탐제게도 다그 쉐된도 나서 다더니 가서래 진주 가서 섬전남라 차잖아 양다니나 군도도 저희 섬장지바제 타마냥란 대화죠 tel라 sem바 가시기 최디 되면 나와 팡 전에 오다 숨반나신 제 sem전남라 차찬에 세가나 아니 sem전지 최비 아니 가서래 최디 편조라 아니 차바 차나야 차나 아니 양다되나 군도 뒤시 내로 양다바 통와라 아니 집어셔봐 어텐다위 아니 대자 태기 왕도 손이 내로 통와라 집어셔봐 마세 코라 미바기 내중야 아니 깨가봐 최디 편조라 안에 거기 편조라 예미스 마동와 거기 편조라 가신 조신도 아니 차바티가 와도 좋니 아니 거기 예면 코라 예미 마동와 예장 아니 코라 미베 교시 미제바 예장 섬전남라 차잖아 양다니라 근도지 교육 섬장 지바체 코라 미베 아니 교시야 지바체 나 텐데 지바체바 예장 아니 거기 편조 텐도 예데 티체도 아니 우리가 예수 아니 미게베 쳐란 자르베 미게베 랜 두바기 아니 레지 남면 대라 아니 가서 제와 치마 아니 나송고 내수 때때데 아니 동아 봐도 뭐 영화야 영거야 영화연장 타만양은 대와 동아 줄 그래서
yes, as it says in the introduction to the Bodhisattva's way of life, sentient beings out of attachment are obscured with respect to reality, and then they're also absorbed in the pleasures of this life, the excellent things that can be achieved in this life. And then out of that, they experience limitless, measureless forms of suffering. So what this refers to is that initially, one out of our attachment to the things of this life, the temporary happiness, the kinds of pleasures that come and go, these things, then this kind of attachment creates an obscuration in our minds, which prevents us from understanding the way things are, the actual nature of things. But not only that, that kind of attachment impels us to engage in various kinds of physical, mental, and verbal activities. And these physical and mental and verbal activities, which are dominated by mental affliction, then make us, these karmas, set up the cause for the future experience of suffering. And then thus, this entire process of suffering, and all of the various forms of suffering that arise, from the least to the greatest, all of these derive from that kind of attachment that we have to, that ordinary sentient beings have to the pleasures of this life, the temporary pleasures of this life.
Oh yeah, tell us about Gashiki, Teddy Temen Dawa Pang, Segana, Ani, or the Chabati, Gunalandi, Ani Teddy Pindo Tajishua, Nashi, Jenny, Ani Teddy Pinzo Laba, Pinzo Yaboji, Yomi Shidu, Ani, or Casore, Zendi. Tell her, or didn't get the Chedu Sadi, Ani Bacasore, Teddy Pinzola, Zen by Chedi Zamba, Ani Tanjoji ten top at the Teme, or Tanjogo ten Tanjo top at the Teme. Teme Bashi, tell us about Bashi could set it to me. Dawa Pang, Sagi, Denji Chane, Aning Ele Tabata Tamja Juba, Jubeki, Denji, you are ready. They take the Pejet Onside, Pejet Labatana. Jinjugana Sumanashi, Kansa Gecha Guardian, Gawataki, Mashana. Nason Dunga Queen's Moma, Tezetaki Chita Churu, Secretary, Sedela, 개와 쳇바게 타바다 탐제 집에 남마 간제지 주문나야 그룹이 까와다 담바 이나야 다테 개와 다게 마샤 와자 까와다 내나야 템 마주바 쳇 아니 체디 핀조라 자네 고숨 아니 두숨 그 뀌냐란데 메게 왜 내라 마 자기 대소나 되니 대불라 산다 쇼와나세 내서 송도 그래 동아빠도는 많이 그래 대세 안에다 지하잖아요 말이 대세다 그 지달차.
So thus, this kind of our attachment to the temporary ephemeral pleasures of this life and the excellent kinds of things that we have in a life like this prevents us from understanding reality. It sets up all of the causal conditions for all of our future experience of suffering. And it also disables us from being able to develop renunciation in any way whatsoever. So that if we have that attachment to these nice things, pleasurable things that we have in this life, there's no way that we can enter into the path to liberation, not to speak of the achievement of omniscience and Buddhahood. There's simply no basis for achieving any kind of higher path as long as one has this attachment to this life. Then, likewise, out of the attachment to this life, right now, at this moment, we've obtained a good life where we have freedom and opportunity to practice Dharma, to develop our virtue, and to ensure that in our next life we're going to have a good life, or even we can work towards the achievement of the high status, the highest good sort of conditions of liberation, as well as we can work towards the achievement of Buddhahood. But if we're attached to the pleasures of this life, then this opportunity that we have at the moment, that is this moment of freedom and opportunity that we've achieved right now, then that will become meaningless. It will be simply wasted chasing after ephemeral pleasure, and not only that, in the process of chasing after ephemeral pleasure, will accumulate vast quantities of negative actions, lots of sinful sorts of behaviors, and then those in turn will induce us, it will set up the causal situation by which after we've wasted this current life of leisure and fortune or opportunity, then we'll fall into one of the lower realms of existence and will suffer measureless forms of misery and suffering in one of those states of existence.
Oh yeah, that is good. 가서 대화 타자 마사야나 디바 타자 녀사나 까와 채와 자야니 든디 자야 퇴민주로 스체네 근데다 땡피숨서와 든지 라나양 아니 가서를 개회래 싸와는 마셔봐 가서 체디 핀조라고 코디 개회라 싸와는 마셔나 개와 타자 마셔나 아니 디바 타자 녀사네 근데 디반 사위 남이 대부대라 아니 시간을 미게 వెళ్ళాల 쇠담니 아니 야와르 제니 나손도 제니 아니 양양에서 제 시제라 아니 된도기 다양 처음 믿어봐 어디니 대양 아니 가소래 야와라야 마치 제소는 나손도 지 제소나 아니 가소래 차랑아마게 내기 남은 그 대우대 아니 봐 세찬이 teneya ani dinji denji tobaji ongure wesana tiang 신도 가워인 봐 대점 권한 용조장 테니 남자 만져지 대다 테니 용신도 디바샹다라도 제시가라 어체디 미기위 내지 남이지 되고 아니 냐와라 마지 홍천아 아니 테네야 타와 신도 내가 연바지 냐위 내가 라야 아니 디바샹다라도 제 디바 말레마 보사니까 아니 냐와네 냐와 개와 마조 아니다 된도 개와의 신도에 가왔어.
So then, if we wasted this life we have now, which is endowed with all of these excellent good qualities, that is, we have this freedom to practice, to develop our virtue, and we're free from major obstacles that would prevent us from engaging in virtue. So if we simply utilize this current life, chasing after pleasure, temporary forms of happiness, then this life will just be wasted in that way. And not only that, if we not only do not develop virtue, but if we go beyond that and we develop or create lots of heavy negative kinds of actions, strong non-virtue, sinful kinds of behavior, then at the end of this life, when we are at the point of death, the probability is that one of these non-virtuous karmas, the heavy sinful karmas that we've created in the past, will be triggered. It'll come into be activated by a negative sort of attitude that we'll have at the point of death. Then, when that has matured, that is the effect of that heavy negative karma that we've accumulated in the past is actualized, then we'll fall into hell, into one of the hell or one of the other extremely heavy lower states of existence, but especially into one of the hells. And when one is born in the hells, one doesn't even hear the word high status. That is, one doesn't even hear there's no sound or even knowledge of that there is such a thing as good sorts of rebirth. Rather, one simply suffers measureless forms of intense, harsh kinds of suffering for incredibly long periods of time. And then at the end of that, you might think, well, okay, after that's over, then probably I'll be able to be reborn into one of the higher states of existence. But that's very, very rare. It's very unlikely that will happen. In fact, much more often is the case that at the end of one life in hell, at the end of that life when one dies as a hell being, then another heavy negative karma is likely to be triggered, and one will be born into another hell or into some other extremely bad form of existence in that kind of life. So thus, the idea that we can think that we'll be able to, even if we're born into a lower state of existence, that we'll be able to get out of that and return to this kind of condition that we have at the present, that is simply not correct. It's not likely to happen at all, because when we're born in these extremely heavy states of extreme suffering, it's more likely that we'll simply be reborn in another state of extreme suffering, or maybe born as an animal where we'll create more negative karma and then continue to just cycle in these through the cycle within the lower realms of existence without coming up out of them into the higher states of existence.
Oh yeah, that tenderly, 아니 단조 그때 토바데 아니 취소도 마송와 인벌이는 거야. 저 만달라 저와 심만래라 안테바 준비 취주문게 그때 체발전 온디 온디리 된 체발전지 두고와. 대라 때는 아니 내려 두고와 인자 당원도 당 내려 두지게 탑된 바기 다디 리지트와 그 신삼데 다디 가서 디바 체중이게 가사게 돈이 참아 또바 충분된 바데라 니 여발래 디바 타바 토발라야 아니 돈이 참아 또 거와다 디바 체중이 쳐봐 이 예배나네 다 담보 타바 토발라 돈이 참아 또 거와다 마셔세.
So then, having considered that at this moment we've achieved this temporary life of opportunity where we're free from heavy obstacles to practice, and we have all of these conditions that enable us to practice, we can use this opportunity right now we should think of it as a chance we have to be able. We can now work towards the achievement of another good life in the next life, and we're doing that not just as an end in itself, but because we're attempting to enter into and practice the greater vehicle. We want to be able to achieve a good life so that we can continue to study and practice the greater vehicle, and then and eventually achieve the high status, the highest good sort of condition where we can achieve liberation and then ultimately Buddhahood. So we think with that motivation in mind, so as not to waste this moment that we have now, this life, we should think we're going to listen to this instruction on the precious garland. And we've arrived at the portion of the text here where it says that the instruction or explanation that within both the greater and the lesser vehicle, persons who are following both of these vehicles, greater and lesser vehicle, are similar with respect to how they understand and realize they have of the subtle form of emptiness. And then there's another subdivision here that shows that in order to, even just to simply obtain liberation, it's necessary to understand the subtle form of emptiness. And then there's an explanation of the difference between the two vehicles, the greater and lesser vehicle. So first comes the explanation that it's necessary to understand the subtle form of emptiness in order to simply achieve liberation. And this is given in verse 65.
Oh, yeah. 다 타바토발라 돈이 참고 타르고와 타바 시와니 다 가상어망아주 kon시와 나신이시니 또 채와 아니 차원 도시기 사제지 내len지 풍부 아니 동안 여러 시위 아니 미시 sana 동아 빵빵 다나 아니 윤모바 사변다 자와 빵비 과된텔라 타바 시와리 된다비 아니 타바 토발라 아니 돈이 참고 또 거와데 간지레 사레가라 아니 동아대 빵와 제발라 아니 동아지 주 난제 말이 빵고와레 난제 말이 빵와 대라 아니 난제 말이 바기 샤연 빵고스도 또 바기 로데 고고에 와나 돈이 참고 또 거와 인자 다 대순고와레 와 대양 대다양다 지신도 로와 되매 시에는 김에 바이 매신도 내매내매 양한데 대다양다 지신도 세가나 양다바서 대다 시원 나신 양다바 치다와 신도 세가 양다와 잠도반이 체是吧 조와 장신지 주비 되매바 양다바 치다와 신도 세나가나 아니 내루도비 동바테기 아니 사모동반이 치다를 세바 대신도 조와나 라시지 주비 되매바 시에네 시에네니 다 라시지 매바 시에바 인장 아니 가서로 코를 제제긴 주 아니 가서로 당진 말을 받이 아니 돈이도 별로 테라 때나 당진 말을 받아 가게와 인상 규메 바이 메신도 세가라 아니 저와 되면 세네니 규메 바이 메신도 세 규메비 메신도 아니 세버지와 그 주와 말이 규메비 메신도 규메나 메메바 나시 메제지 그 규메나 메메바 나시 스바제지 그 스바세 코알라차네 코알 제제 그주 당신 말을 봐야 세바 인상 아니 거기 좋아요 말이
So here then, in order to, it says the next instruction is that simply to obtain liberation, merely obtaining liberation, it's necessary to understand and realize the subtle form of emptiness. So what this is explaining is that, as we've said previously, that liberation here is referring to the extinction of the aggregates which are taken up by contaminated karma and mental affliction. So that extinction of those is is liberation as such. Or one could say it's also the elimination of all of the mental afflictions together with the seeds that give rise to the mental afflictions. That's also a way of understanding what which form of liberation is being referred to here. So in order to achieve that liberation, as we said, one has to eliminate the root cause of it, which is the misapprehension of things as being real. As long as we misapprehend things as being real, that is, existing in a way in which they don't actually exist, Then we will continue to create karma, and that karma will in turn serve as the condition upon which various forms of rebirth and suffering and so forth arise. So it's necessary to eliminate that misapprehension of the way things are in order to grasping at them or misapprehending them as if they were real in order to achieve liberation in any way whatsoever. So this is explained in this verse where it says that, the translation that is given in the text here is 65. I retranslated this in a slightly different way, so I'll just read that if you have this translation. So, thus, having considered the world to be meaningless, just as it is, the homeless one with nothing to take up enters nirvana like a fire without its material cause. So then the commentary on this says that having understood the meaninglessness of things being established by means of their own intrinsic nature, that is, here it says the world. The world here is in reference to the entirety of sentient beings as well as the aggregates and so forth, the world. Having understood that it's meaningless in the sense of being established by means of its own intrinsic nature, and understanding as well, just as it is. Now, correctly, just as it is, or just as it is, this is in reference to emptiness. That is, one is understanding, on the one hand, emptiness, that is, just as it is, and then also understanding that the world is meaningless in the sense of being established by means of its own intrinsic nature. When you have that kind of understanding, then just like a fire, which is without any fuel, with a fire that doesn't have the fuel that gives rise to it, and specifically the material cause of it, then there's no cause for rebirth within existence. Existence here referring to samsara. So where it says there's like a fire without its fuel, this is referring here to the misapprehension of the self as being real, or things as being real, is like the material cause, which gives rise, the substantial cause, which gives rise to all of samsaric existence. So just as a fire which has had its fuel removed from it is extinguished, similarly then the gyumepe meshindu
gyumepe meshindu siba jeje ki juseba yinza ane siba siba yomares.
So just like a fire that doesn't have the material that provides it, that is the fuel that allows it to burn, then if you remove misapprehension of things as being real, you have removed the basic or material cause of the arising of existence, of samsaric existence. And in the same way, just as a fire is extinguished when the fuel is no longer present, similarly, the samsaric existence is extinguished when its material cause, the misapprehension of things as being real, is eliminated.
Oh yeah. Leme nyangan da se de yang ane sibara jewa ki neste karela sigore sa danze mari patene serap chagore riba tuje gaso neje semdan denamla nimon tuje jimisho kanze paman dubala nimon tuje semba juru jani suwana shin neje semdan denbala nimon tuje semmedo se gala ne 아니 니모 탐제지 자와 단지 말을 받대라 네 치자라 아니 될었대네 단지 말을 받대라대네 차다 무슨 제 그와 내제 섬난 때발라 니모 투제 제 미숑 간제 밤만 두발아야 니모 두지 섬바 줄을 세가라 차단기 왕 내가 되나 그 미가 온도 마상 마중아 아이 아니 밤을 내와 이나양 아니야 자와 단정 말이버 왕기 아니 니모그 주지 심바 생그레 소아나시 전에 인단 디기 내세데 단정 기비 내 코르 기비 계지기 뒤조 아니 단정라 전에 인단 양스바르 기비 내 단정 매바임베 단정 로베 양스바련바 매베스 단정기 왕기 차단 모습 제매 차단 모습 매바 인자 차단 모습 그 왕기 레사바데매 레디 매바 레디 저우 아니 코비 겨와된 도바 인상 양아랜다와 토그레 세가 아니 차와두지 그 동안 여러 시비 양대도 토벌 주어래 응
양치바 키위
양스바 기위 내 매베 고아기와 내 매바 고아기비 내 당진이다
So then it says that just like a fire which is without its material cause, then there's no cause for the arising of existence, samsaric existence. That is, and here the causes is material cause is this misapprehension of things as being real or misapprehension of the self as if it existed in the way it appears. Because there's no cause for the arising of that, then the result, that is the samsaric existence itself, ceases to arise. And then it continues to say, because there is no abode, one could literally translate as because as the one without a home or without a residence or a place where they live, such a person, someone who is without that kind of home, which is rebirth within samsara, will not take up rebirth again. Now, the word home here actually has a kind of ambiguity built into it, because it's referring to like the residence or the basis upon which one is established. And here, this is being explained with the connotation of a sort of home or basis in the sense of the misapprehension of the self as if it was real. So this misapprehension of the self is itself the foundation or basis or sort of like home within which one, or out of which, due to which one takes rebirth. And so a person that is without that kind of abode or foundation or home in the sense of the grasping misapprehension of the self as being real, because they don't have that which serves as the foundation for taking rebirth, then they don't. There's no taking up of rebirth here. Taksin baklinyal yuna teni drul di kalsuna di
ne mebe 당진 방바 인장 아니 주 당진 방바 인장 당진의 왕기 차단 모습도 차단 모습도 봐인다 차단 모습과 왕기 아니 레사바기 아니 레이 코에 겨와든 도바 봐 코에 겨와 도바 인장 아니 가서 동안 여러 시위 니시 양알에 대화를 토바 인자 내매 양한다.
So then where it says in the verse there, the one who is homeless, with the homeless person with nothing to take up, that here the home is as a metaphor for this like an abode, which is understood in the sense of the misapprehension of the self. And again, this misapprehension of the self, the fundamental ignorance, is the source of all of the other mental afflictions, attraction and aversion, desire and hatred, and all of the other forms of the mental afflictions. And it's out of those mental afflictions that we create karma, and then we take up new forms of rebirth within samsara over and over. And so if you don't have that home or foundation, then because you've removed that cause, which gives rise to all of the other mental afflictions, then there won't be any further taking up of rebirth and any more taking up of samsaric existence. So here, when it says with someone who is without a home, that is without this misapprehension of the self, this also refers to not having it or getting rid of it together with the seeds that give rise to it. Because if the seeds of that are still present within one's mind, then it's liable to, it will recur in the future, even if manifest forms of it are not present in the mind. So the analogy that's given there, it's like if you have a snake that's not obvious, or it's hiding in a rock or something, under a rock, even though it's not present and biting you, then eventually it's there and liable to come out and will eventually bite you. So therefore, in order to achieve actual liberation, which is the cessation or stoppage of taking up rebirth within samsaric existence, one has to eliminate this misapprehension of the self, together with all of its the seeds for it. That's the actual extinction of the basis for taking rebirth and so forth.
Oh yeah, that didn't. Tanda digi, yanda chishi yon xixin, anda tata yanda chishin to draw to me xian ni, gimme by mission to neme nyanganda, sa shung tata ki, ani nyeran la, tony chamo yoba. Sawa tempare, nyeran la tony chamo yoba, toba yoba sawa tempare, masa, nyeran papa la, tony musum to tebe, chava tangore. Right? 내 가르에서나 아니 가서 진주 가서 간지 롱라 남전에 매바 창주 매바 송 간지 롱래 셔러지 바로 집에 롱래 매바 창주 매바 송 세가나 돈용 것은도 또밖에 남디 매바를 아니 년대지 창주 랑자지 창주 특전지 창주 수보 강양 토바 매바 토바 매고고와 인장 년대지 창주라 토바 매바 송사의 가와레서나 다 도디리 노래 년대지 살라려바 대배장 셔러지 바로를 집어라 나와 차오 세다 간다 대시에 년대 주와 주냠나 년대지 창주 토바 토바 제발라야 돈용 것은도 배셔라고 해 다 도디 송바 연장 아니 가소래 내라라 돈이 도와기 뭐 파바라 돈용 것은 돼 차와 주게 되기 눈디죠 다데 간다 대시 이 주와 냠세다 태면 그 되네라 순이 우원 되와 자 수우원 되와 뭐와 되와 나시 라시지도 봐 빼라자니 대다기 아니 태면 투모면 되네라 최지담에 때마다 주고 와래 다음에
So here then, this indicates as well, where it says in the root text that one with nothing, the homeless one with nothing to take up, enters nirvana like a fire without its material cause. That is evidence here for the position that it's necessary for people who are following all three vehicles, not only bodhisattvas, but also people who are following the Shravaka vehicle as well as the Pratyeka Buddha vehicle. They too have to understand and realize directly realize this subtle form of emptiness in order to achieve the forms of liberation that they actualize along their paths. This is also explained, or the evidence for this is also the fact that this is expressed in sutra as well. The sutras themselves present this position. This is referenced also in the introduction to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where it says that without understanding emptiness, without realizing emptiness, there's no form of liberation at all, meaning, again, that one cannot achieve liberation via the Shravaka path or the Pratyeka Buddha path, not to speak of the Bodhisattva path as well. So then in terms of the sutras that are presented as evidence for this, the text here says that the meaning of these statements above is also found in the sutras as well. That is, this is explaining that Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas as well necessarily have to realize the subtle form of emptiness, and this is clearly expressed in the sutras. And here there's a sutra passage which is quoted. This is from the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, where it says that one who wishes to train themselves on the level of the Shravaka should practice the perfection of wisdom. That perfection of wisdom is the reference here to the subtlest form of emptiness. So it's clear from the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras that Shravakas also have to understand this form, the perfection of wisdom, this subtle form of emptiness. And it also says, La ganda deshik yentu gyurwa chanyamna. Ale. Ganda deshik.
Ganda deshik nyende gyurwa chanyamna. Nyende ki chanchu toba chebala. Gyu ganda nyende ki chanchu toba chebala. Ane karo gugure eza chi wama la tena ranshimi bato be tawa go wate.
Ganda deshik yentu gyurwa chanyamna.
Nyende ji ganda deshik nyende gyurwa chunamna. Nyende ki chanchu toba gyurwa.
So then someone might think, well, is this referring to the liberation of the Tathagata? Is this reference here? Is the Tathagata referring to the specific? The Buddha referring here to the specific liberation of the Shravaka? And that is not the case, because this is the same idea that one necessarily has to understand and realize the subtle form of emptiness is expressed in the scriptures that are accepted as authoritative, even by the followers of the lesser vehicle or the inferior vehicle, because it says that. Material things are balls of foam. Material things are balls of foam. And then the passage in the sutra continues discussing the other aggregates and showing how they are also illusory, and therefore this is evidence that in those sutras as well, the Lord Buddha is teaching that all things are devoid of intrinsic existence, are empty.
야, 네 차바데 가상 아주 얘가 친차인 바 주다 오마 란주바 맨제 대기 아니 렌징 코이 자와 믿어 봐. 렌징 시르블라 돼. 가사게 단징 코이 자와 돼. 가사게 단징 세야지 가르서래 서로 가사 담아 주바 집에 집바데 마셔 봐. 가사 란자 집에 자이도 주베 집바데 샤이. 대샤니까 네 차바데 되는 저거 아래. 코유자와 가사를 앉아 두고 저희도 주고 있지만데 샤 렌즈 시에도샤 예자 코알라 토알라 돈이도 먹어와 가사를 앉아 두고 저희 동방 온심도 또숨 고마 채와라 때는 코알라 줘도봐 해봐디 저거 디시고다.
So then we need to understand here there's a different interpretations of how one distinguishes the view with respect to the lesser vehicle and the greater vehicle. Now, in terms of the lower systems of Buddhist philosophy, that is, these systems below the Prasangika system, these positions or these schools of thought hold that to achieve liberation. Or to back up here, they differentiate two kinds of misconception or misapprehension of things as being the obscurations that are mental afflictions on the one hand, and obscurations that prevent the achievement of omniscience on the other hand. In this position of the lower schools of Buddhist philosophy, they say that the misapprehension of the person as if it possessed a self, which was a self-sufficient substance, they say that that is the obscurations which are mental afflictions, and therefore by getting rid of that kind of misapprehension alone, one can achieve liberation. Now, in that position as well, they would say that the misapprehension of the person as, or the misapprehension of the self as if it were real, again, 덴진
인주 많이 봐 덴진 시접이 봐체 가사를 안 제도 왜 자유도 주가 집에 전바대 가사가 당진 어때 아니다 민집 코야 자와 치가 됐디 대 인상 코와를 줘발라 동반이 또 고고 말해.
So they say that then the misapprehension of the things, phenomena, as well, persons and other phenomena, as being real, they would say that is the kind of obscuration that prevents omniscience. So they would say, although it's necessary to get rid of that in order to achieve Buddhahood, to simply achieve liberation, then that's not necessary to get rid of that. So that's their sort of interpretation of this, whereas the Prasangika Madhyamika has a different interpretation of this.
Oh yeah, that didn't. We never tanju la. Ane tenzin, ane shiju mayemba. Tenzin, ane kuni kasore nyunju yemba. Kasa ke tanzi da chuji tanzi niga nyunju yemba. 아니 거기 자와양 아니 가사가 단체 최 단체 댄싱 인바 댄싱 거기 자와 인바 인장 아니 코랄 좋아라 댄싱 그 시험에 봐또 거와지 또 그거 연자 돈이 또 거와 인장 코랄 좋아라 돈이 또 거와 얘랑 봐봐라 돈이 또 거 얘랑 그 chanju 타봐라 돈이 또 거와지 아니 리바 숨다 롱 뒤엄 고유권에
So then, here now in the Prasangika system, on the other hand, in actual fact, or the way things actually are, and this is the way it's presented in the Prasangika system, here then it is the case that misapprehension of things as being real is a obscuration, which is a mental affliction, and therefore even to achieve liberation, one necessarily has to eliminate that misapprehension of things as being real. Now, there are two forms of the misapprehension of things as being real. That is, there's the misapprehension of the person as being real, and then there's misapprehension of the other phenomena other than the person as being real. But both of these are considered to be forms of the mental afflictions, the obscurations that are mental afflictions. Therefore, both of these forms of the misapprehension of things as being real must necessarily be gotten rid of in order to achieve liberation. And in order to accomplish that, one has to ascertain that the object, the fictitious object, which is apprehended or which is apprehended by that misapprehension of things as being real, that is, things existing by means of their own intrinsic nature, that fictitious object is actually completely non-existent. And so it's through that understanding of the non-existence of the fictitious object, which is apprehended by or imagined or apprehended by the misapprehension of things as being real, that one achieves liberation. This is the way it actually is, and the way it is presented in the Prasangika system.
Oh yeah, that did not. Daniwa tiba chejung ki chebani tiba chenbo nyandeji wandu chewa sana. Da tiba chejung ki cheba jidang karere sana tabji chala sana sona. 삼바 아니 장주그 샘당 대제제 그주 아니 년지 첨보 줄레덴베 그 가사데라 특바침보 와 어텐다베 아니 가서래 장주그에서나 년지 첨보 매봐 아니 라니 지보 아니 코유 동안 녀월 시위 아니 니시 토바 되어바기 년저그 장주 어다 가퇴니 그 로쩌만 많이 받게 되라 팀엔지 가사 제가 셰럽 탑지 저어데 가르래서나 아니 가소래 탑시 쳐바제니 어디 영경기 아니 가소래 람라 슝경 가사데라 아니 티진 대야 많이 봐 탑시 쳐바니다 메덴 바기 아니 어라니 지보 타바다 되게 그 로쩌만 많이 봐 줄에 깽 영경데라 티바 멤버
So here then, what we've just stated about the differentiation of the two forms of obscurations, this is established by three major reasons, and then also three scriptural passages, and then seven. I'm confused. There's three major reasonings that establish that, and then also 7 or 9 forms of analysis of Scripture that are able to establish that. Now, turning to the actual difference between the greater and lesser vehicle, when we say greater vehicle and lesser vehicle, here we're referring actually to the person, a person who is following the greater vehicle, or a person who is following the lesser vehicle. Now, a person who is following the greater vehicle is someone who has developed non-artificial bodhicitta. That is, they've developed the aspiration to achieve perfect awakening for the sake of all sentient beings in a way in which it's not artificial. It's not something that they have to use a great deal of effort to generate. Rather, it's natural to them. That's the method side of things. And then motivated by that bodhicitta, they enter into, engage in various forms of activities, the practice of the 6 perfections of generosity and so forth. And it's through that, on the method side, that is what makes that person a Mahayanist. And then on the wisdom side, they have to have develop an understanding of emptiness at some level, at least. And then, so that is what really constitutes a person, a Mahayanist, in the sense of a person who has entered into the Mahayana. With respect to the Hinayana, on the other hand, a Hinayana practitioner has, on the method side, they develop a non-artificial, a sort of natural aversion and disgust with samsara. And they have developed the almost automatic or natural wish to become free from samsara. But they're doing that, they have that focusing upon themselves in particular alone, and their objective is to achieve the liberation, which is the separation from samsara, and the peace, which is the result of that separation from samsara, or the extinction of samsara within themselves. So that's on the method side for them. Then on the wisdom side, they also have to have an understanding and eventual realization of emptiness.
Oh yeah, that tabji chana shana tendeji. Tiba chejung java tabji chabara shana. Sherabji chana shana. Ani kasore. 태권하니 암 사모 동반이 리빈 남랑 타야 비관에 또 마도게 리빈 남랑 타야 비관에 또 와데 티바 침보라요 리빈 남랑 타야 비관에 또 와데 년되라 사모 동반이 리빈 땡라 배바 요아래데 리빈 남랑 타야 비관에 땡라 배바 매바 인상 아니야 셰럽게 쳐버려잖아 들으셔.
So then we can also differentiate on the wisdom side. of things. Although they each have understanding of emptiness, there's a significant difference in the degree to which they have it. That is, on the Mahayana side, the wisdom portion of it, bodhisattvas, they employ numberless forms of reasoning in order to establish emptiness, and in order to establish reality. They, when they're investigating reality, they employ numberless forms of reasoning so as to establish reality in a thorough fashion. Now, on the other hand, the Hinayanists, those who have entered the Hinayana path, they too develop an understanding of reality, but they do so by much more limited forms of reasoning, and therefore there's a significant distinction between the wisdom that exists within the Mahayana practitioner and the Hinayana practitioner.
Oh yeah, 다라누 티바체 중에 체바 탑시 기관에 샤 대다 줘버린 바나 다다나 티바체 중에 체바디 티바침비 냥대지 왕도 체바 오 세나 어느 테마레 대다 장주 셈냥대 대다 장주 셈배장 토네 장주 야와데 냥대 데메데기 냥대 토바 데메데기 권에 티바체 중에 체바 저그로 해서 대야 말이 마인데 장주 셈배장 냥대스 마산 장주 셈배장 아니 냥대 토바 되그래 대다 장주 셈배자 토네 장주 야와데 세가나 대다 장주 셈배장 세배장다지 냥대스 마세 냥대 그 장주 토바 되바 마세 장주 셈배장 냥대 그 가서 장주 토바 되그래 돈이 토네 조회 장주 얼마 토바 되바고 장주 셈배장 원하티바 치중기 개바 지시 예제나 아니 자주서바 코아네 유메비 시세나 다 대양 많이 봤어요. 대제라셔야지.
So then one might say, well, is it the case that we make this kind of, in terms of the differentiation of the two vehicles, the greater vehicle and the lesser vehicle, one might think, is it the case that this differentiation is made based upon the nirvana, which one achieves through the Mahayana? And that is not the case. And this is explained in the first half of verse 66. And I've modified this a little bit. And I've said, a bodhisattva, having seen this, becomes definite to achieve awakening. The explanation of this is that thus a bodhisattva, having seen this, becomes certain or definite to achieve awakening. Thus, the bodhisattva, and then in the actual, in the original, it actually says, thus a bodhisattva, having also seen this, is definite to achieve awakening. So where it says also, therefore, thus, the bodhisattva also is definite to achieve awakening. That word also is clear evidence that this is not not in reference to the awakening that is actualized by Shravakas alone.
That's right.
Right. So then the conclusion of that is that having seen emptiness, we hold the position that it's from having seen emptiness that a bodhisattva is certain or definitely will achieve perfect awakening or complete awakening.
Oh yeah, 지당 가서 아마 까지 좋아 나시래라 냥대 생각되라 아니 티바 춘비 냥대서나 티바 춘비 냥대서나 아니 간지지라 고그래서나 미네비 냥대 시바 시바단 시와니가기 아니 대비 시실 시비탈라만에 시비탈라면에 시시니가 그 탑밤이 냐데 되라 되라 미네비 냐데 시과데 드버치비 냐데 다 년도기 창주 냐데도 저 가려서 니를 빵바 되라 아니 내년지 왕그 khoar 제와 대 체점 내년지 왕그 khoar 제와 체점지 냐데 신자들라 체배냐데 멘배냐데 내년지 왕그 제와 체점 마도 아니 단다디 삼신도 khoar 제와 내비 아니 제와도 좀 마방마도 봐是吧 인자 내년 그 제와 체점지 냐데 되라 멘배냐데 되라 체배냐데
So then, in terms of nirvana, we need to distinguish between the nirvana, which is expressed in the Mahayana, and the nirvana, which is achieved by Shravakas who achieve arhatship. Now, nirvana, as it's understood in the Mahayana, is called nirvana, which is not fixated, or nirvana, which is not localized, two ways of translating the same term. What we mean here by not fixated or localized is that the bodhisattva, when they achieve Buddhahood and actualize nirvana, which is not fixated or localized, or even in the course of the path, they actualize nirvana, which is not fixated or localized. What this refers to is that they achieve liberation from existence, that is samsaric existence, so they're not fixated in that. But they're also not fixated in the peace, which is the simple cutting off of or cessation of samsaric existence. So the bodhisattva does not remain fixated or localized in that specific kind of peace in that way. Now, so therefore, the bodhisattva is able to, according to their wish, even though they're not fixated in samsara or in existence in the world, they are able to take birth within samsaric existence or within the field of samsaric existence as they wish. And according to their wishes, but they're not trapped in that situation. Now, the Shravaka practitioners, on the other hand, who achieve nirvana, they achieve a simple cessation or cutting off of the continuity of the samsaric process and existence within samsara. That is, they produce a severance of the continuity of the taking rebirth within samsaric existence under the control of karma and mental affliction. So they actualize a kind of peace which is out of or free from samsaric rebirth. However, once they achieve that kind of state, because of the inferiority of their method, the method that they're employing, they're not able to they're not even able to take rebirth within the samsaric field of existence in the way that the bodhisattva is able to do. So therefore, this Hinayana nirvana is called a nirvana, which is a simple severance of connection to samsara, and it's also called an inferior form of nirvana.
오늘 대제라다 chanju toba toba niga la yena ona tiba chejung ge chaba chi shi yoare ane 가서 당 코위 자와 단제 말이 봐 세바기 아니 chanju 삼바 되다 아니 코아르냐 봐그 주메 봐 주로 챤나 나 되라 대 주메 봐 말이 싫어 티바 chejung 되니 이제 바시기 아니 chanju 봐도 인잠 저 대 텐다와데 아니 가서래 인지 왕게 삼시도 거리 잡아 낸거 와래 레다니 뭐그 많이 봐 그 자주 셈바 되니 인지 왕게 자주 마도 봐도 아니 세바를 아니 끼그래 세바 년담 좋아인지 레다 시비 왕게 레다 니모 레다 세바인지 레다 세바 되자라 잖아 와 세비 왕게 아니 겨와래 말에 레다 니모 왕게 겨와 말에 어대 인상 자주 세바 삼신도 코를 겨와래 봐 세바를 마도 인지 왕게 삼신도 코를 겨와는데 레다 니모 왕게 겨와 말에
So then you might think, well, what is the actual difference between the two vehicles, the greater vehicle and the lesser vehicle? What is that? And one might also likewise think, is it the case that the Bodhisattva is like the Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha, the Hinayana practitioner? Is it the case that the Bodhisattva also is devoid of the cause for remaining in samsara? And then the second half of verse 66 explains how that is not the case. And it says, it is just due to their compassion that they continue to take rebirths until awakening. The commentary on this shows that so out of compassion here, it's merely by compassion. This refers to the Bodhisattva taking rebirth within samsara, not under the control of karma and mental affliction, but according to their own wish, according to their own intention, taking that kind of rebirth. So the Bodhisattva takes rebirth within the world, samsara, until they achieve Buddhahood out of that. So then the commentary explains the fault which you're ascribing or that you're imagining is not the case. That Bodhisattva, merely by compassion, that is merely by their intention, until they achieve awakening, take rebirth within existence, but they do not take rebirth by the force of karma and craving. Craving here is a form of desire or afflicted desire.
Oh yeah. Leda ni mong leda seba wange ani kyawa lemba ni me leda ni mong wange seba kyawa me ba yinzang ani da chanjusam chansam papa de zola ani jiwi donga gawi donga nawi donga ani chiwi donga a dingzu ba da yo ma de ba papa chidang gawa dang nawi donga zane bang leda ni mo wange ji tela temi chide me chane gyula mala songa nashin chane oda o 가서래 chansim 가성아 막 songa nashin chare 사탐부 토바네 송데 아니 인지 왕게 아니 어 시바를 현대의 개발한 바 마도 레다니 뭔가 그 개발매 대매와 이제 개가 나시 동안 주스매 봐.
So here then it says that so the Bodhisattva takes rebirth in existence or samsara until they achieve awakening, but not by the they do no. They take rebirth in existence out of strictly by the force of their compassion, that is out of their own intention, but not by they don't take rebirth by the force of karma and mental affliction. So what that indicates then, this is referring especially and specifically to the Arya Bodhisattvas, that is Bodhisattva who has achieved the understanding of the nature of reality that is actualized on the first bodhisattva stage. So bodhisattvas on that stage and then the subsequent stages as well, they don't take they do return. They're reborn in samsara, but they do not take rebirth by the force of karma and mental affliction. And thus, because they do not take rebirth in samsara by the force of karma and mental affliction, therefore they don't undergo any of the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So they don't have those kinds of experiences of suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death to any degree whatsoever. This is explained likewise in the Uttara Tantra, the higher system of the Mahayana, where the same thing is said, that those Aryas do not undergo any of the forms of suffering of aging, sickness, and birth, aging, sickness, and death.
Oh yeah. We're
We're going to stop here because Lama Zopa Rinpoche is leaving, so we'll stop here.
Rana Mendala Gani Adayam